Listen closely, because what I am about to tell you will fundamentally change everything you think you know about predators, prey, and the terrifying species that somehow managed to convince the galaxy they were friendly. The first time I saw a Vrexian dreadclaw up close, I experienced what my species calls the final knowing. That moment when prey understands it has become meat. Standing 3 meters tall at the shoulder, covered in armored scales that could deflect plasma fire, with jaws capable of crushing starship hull plating, the dreadclaw represented apex predation in its purest, most horrifying form. The Vrexian ambassador, a massive reptilian named Krelok, had brought his personal hunting companion to the Galactic Council's annual summit as a demonstration of his species' martial prowess. Smart move, honestly. Nothing says do not mess with us quite like casually walking a creature that could disembowel a platoon through a diplomatic reception. I am Tilix, a junior xenobiologist from Paxis 7, and I had been assigned to document interspecies interactions at the summit. My job typically involved recording boring conversations about trade agreements and resource allocation. Not today, apparently. The dreadclaw prowled behind Krelok, on a restraint field, its 6 eyes scanning the crowd with predatory intelligence. Every diplomat in the Grand Hall gave them a respectfully wide berth. Even the usually arrogant Caltharian representatives pressed themselves against the walls as the pair passed. Then the human walked in. Now I had studied humans before. Fascinating species. Death world origin. Pack bonding instincts that bordered on the pathological, and a peculiar tendency to adopt anything with eyes as a potential pet. But knowledge and experience are vastly different things, especially where humans are concerned. This particular human, a security consultant named Marcus Webb, stood maybe 1.8 meters tall, built lean but solid, with those unsettling binocular eyes that tracked movement with predatory precision. He wore a casual jacket over a simple shirt, completely inappropriate for a formal diplomatic gathering, and he was eating something called a breakfast burrito while reviewing a datapad. He looked up, noticed the dreadclaw, and his face transformed into an expression I had learned to recognize with deep concern. Human designation, puppy. Oh no. Tilix, buddy, Marcus called out, waving me over. We had worked together on security protocols for the past week, which meant I had somehow become his default alien friend. Check out that absolute unit. What kind of dog is that? That is not a dog, Marcus. That is a Vrexian dreadclaw. Quite possibly the most dangerous non-sentient predator in the known galaxy. It has killed over 200 beings in registered hunts alone. So, like a really big dog with an attitude problem, I closed my eyes and prayed to the 17 gods of my homeworld for patience. No, it is a hyper-carnivore with a bite force measured in metric tons. Does it like belly rubs? Marcus, please tell me you are joking. He was not joking. He was already walking toward Krelok and his death machine, with that peculiar human gait that somehow looked both casual and purposeful. I scurried after him, my 4 legs barely keeping pace. Excuse me, Marcus called out cheerfully. Hey there, sir. Amazing beast you have got there. The entire hall went silent. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. The Caltharian ambassador actually dropped her glass of fermented nectar. Krelok turned slowly, his massive form rotating with the deliberate menace of a gun turret acquiring a target. His translator implant crackled to life. You address me, human? Yeah, hi. Marcus Webb, security consultant, could not help but notice your incredible companion there. What is his name? The dreadclaw's nostrils flared, catching Marcus's scent. Its lips pulled back, revealing teeth the size of combat knives. A low rumble emanated from its chest that registered on the seismic sensors in my datapad. Krelok's eyes narrowed. This is Skrull, my clan's primary hunting beast. He has tasted the flesh of 16 different sentient species in sanctioned combat trials. 16. Wow, what a good boy. Marcus took another step closer. I grabbed his arm with 2 of my appendages. Marcus, this is an exceptionally bad idea, even by your species' standards. Relax, Tilix. I grew up with dogs. I know predator body language. That is not a dog. But Marcus had already slipped my grip and approached within 3 meters of Scrale. The Dreadclaw's 6 eyes locked onto him, its hunting instinct clearly triggered. Every muscle in its body tensed. Krelok's hand moved to the restraint field controls on his belt. Human, you are in extreme danger. My companion does not recognize you as anything other than potential prey. Oh, I get it. He is sizing me up, deciding if I am a threat. Classic dominant predator behavior. Marcus crouched down, making himself smaller, and extended one hand, palm up, toward the creature. Hey there, big guy. You are just gorgeous, you know that? Yes, you are. Such shiny scales, such impressive teeth. He was using the voice. That special human tone reserved for babies and small animals, somehow even more disturbing when directed at a creature capable of biting him in half. Skral cocked its massive head, confused. Its threat display faltered slightly. Marcus, please step back, I begged. My report should not include your death by mauling at a diplomatic function. Just wait. He stayed perfectly still, hand extended, making those soft clicking sounds humans somehow knew instinctively. For about 15 seconds, nothing happened. The hall remained frozen. Nobody breathed. Even the environmental systems seemed to quiet down, as if the station itself was holding its breath. Then Skral took a step forward. Krelok's hand hovered over the emergency stasis controls. Human, last warning. It is okay, Marcus said softly, not to Krelok, but to the Dreadclaw. I am not gonna hurt you, buddy. Just wanna say hi. That is all. Skral's nostrils flared again, processing the human's scent in greater detail. Something in its body language shifted. The aggressive tension melted into something else. Something that looked disturbingly like curiosity. It took another step. Then another. Its massive head lowered until its snout was inches from Marcus's extended hand. That is it, Marcus whispered. Take your time. Get to know me. Skral's tongue, roughly the size of my entire torso, emerged and sampled the air around Marcus's hand. Then, in a moment that defied every principle of xenobiology I had ever studied, the creature pressed its massive head against Marcus's palm. The human's face split into a grin that could have powered a small city. Who is a good apex predator? You are. Yes, you are. He started scratching behind one of the armored plates near Skral's skull. The Dreadclaw's eyes, half closed, and it made a sound I had never heard before. A deep, resonating purr that vibrated through the floor plating. By the shattered moons, Krelok breathed, his translator barely keeping up with his shocked whisper. In 4 generations of my clan bonding with Dreadclaws, I have never witnessed this behavior. Marcus looked up, still scratching. Can I pet him? Like properly? You are already petting him, human. No, I mean really pet him. Full body scratches. Maybe check those scales for parasites. See if he likes having his claws cleaned. His claws? Yeah, big predators usually appreciate having their claws maintained. Prevent splitting and infection. I could not believe what I was hearing. Marcus, you are discussing grooming protocols with a creature that considers most sentients to be snack-sized. All predators need proper care. Tilix. Besides, look at him. He is clearly affection-starved. Skral had now lowered himself completely to the ground, rolling partially onto his side in a display of vulnerability that I suspected was unprecedented in Dreadclaw history. Marcus moved in, running his hands over the armored scales, examining joints, checking for injury or irritation with the practiced efficiency of someone who had done this 1,000 times before. You have got some scarring here on your left flank, Marcus observed. Old hunting wound. Krelok knelt down beside them, his usual aggressive posture completely abandoned in favor of stunned fascination. Yes, a Corthan razorback. Skral won the engagement but took damage. Thought so? See how the scales grew back slightly overlapped? That is gonna cause irritation in about 6 months. You will want to have a specialist file those down. He moved to Skral's massive paws, examining each claw with careful attention. These could use some conditioning oil to prevent cracking. You have experience with predator care? Grew up on a ranch. We had dogs, cats, even rehabilitated a few mountain lions that wandered into our territory injured. Dad always said the key to understanding predators is recognizing that underneath all that danger, they are just animals trying to survive. Show them respect, meet their needs, and they will usually reciprocate. Usually? I interjected nervously. Well, sometimes they eat you, but that is pretty rare if you know what you are doing. Not reassuring, Marcus. Not even slightly. Skrull had now completely rolled onto his back, exposing his armored underbelly, while Marcus scratched along the seams between plates. The purring intensified until my internal organs began vibrating sympathetically. A crowd had gathered. Ambassadors from 17 species watched in absolute silence as a human performed the apparently impossible task of turning a legendary killing machine into an oversized puppy. Krelok, Marcus said thoughtfully, still working on the Dreadclaw's belly. Has anyone ever studied the social bonding potential of Dreadclaws beyond the traditional clan structure? No. They are considered solitary hunters. Even clan bonding requires years of aggressive conditioning. But Skrull here is clearly capable of complex social recognition and trust building. I have been scratching him for 5 minutes, and he has not even thought about biting me. This is unprecedented. Which means there might be a whole aspect of Dreadclaw psychology that has been overlooked. Marcus's eyes lit up with that particular human enthusiasm that usually preceded either breakthrough discoveries or spectacular disasters. What if they are not actually solitary by nature, but have been forced into that role by their environmental pressures? What if they are actually pack animals waiting for the right social structure? I watched Krelok's expression shift from shock to thoughtful consideration. That would revolutionize everything we know about bonding protocols, right? And think about the applications. Better human-Vrexian cooperation, improved training methods, maybe even... Skrull chose that moment to sneeze directly into Marcus's face, covering him in a thick layer of mucus that smelled like decomposing starship fuel mixed with rotted meat. Marcus did not even flinch. He just wiped his face and grinned. Bless you, buddy. That was when I realized something terrifying. This was not a lucky interaction. This was not a fluke. This was what humans did. They looked at the galaxy's most dangerous creatures and saw friends. They approached apex predators with belly rubs and baby talk. They turned every encounter with death into an opportunity for interspecies bonding. And somehow, impossibly, it worked. The morning after the incident, which various news outlets were calling either diplomatic miracle or human insanity reaches new peak, depending on their editorial stance, I received an emergency summons to Conference Room 7. The message came flagged with priority codes I had only seen during legitimate crisis situations. When I arrived, I found something far worse than a crisis. I found a committee. Krelok sat at the head of the table, his massive frame somehow looking nervous. Beside him were 3 other Vrexian diplomats, each trying to outscowl the others. Across from them sat Ambassador Chen. No wait, Ambassador Yuki Tanaka from Earth's diplomatic corps, looking far too calm for someone surrounded by predatory reptilians. And at the far end, looking entirely too pleased with himself, sat Marcus, still wearing yesterday's mucus-stained jacket. Ah, Tillix, Marcus waved enthusiastically. Perfect timing. We need your xenobiology expertise. For what, exactly? I settled into a chair designed for beings with more reasonable body configurations than mine. Krelok leaned forward, his claws clicking against the table surface. The human has proposed something either brilliant or catastrophically stupid. We cannot determine which. Both probably, Ambassador Tanaka added helpfully. That is usually how it works with Marcus. Hey, my ideas are great. You once suggested we resolve a border dispute by having both sides compete in a hot dog eating contest. And it worked, did it not? She conceded the point with a slight nod. One of the Vrexian diplomats, whose translator identified him as General Volkath, slammed his fist on the table. Explain to me again why we are considering allowing a human to establish a cross-species predator bonding program. Because, Marcus said, pulling up a holographic display, in the 16 hours since I met Skrull, we have documented behavioral patterns nobody has seen before. Look at this data. He responded to 37 different social cues, demonstrated problem-solving abilities, 15% above established baseline, and showed absolutely zero aggression toward 12 different species who approached him this morning. While you were present, Vorkath growled. Well, yeah. That is how pack bonding works. He has accepted me as part of his social structure, which extends protective instincts to beings I designate as safe. I examined the data streams flowing across the holographic display. As much as I hated to admit it, the numbers were extraordinary. This is remarkable. Skyl's cortisol levels dropped 42% during interaction with Marcus. His dopamine production increased proportionally. These are indicators of genuine stress reduction and positive emotional response. Exactly. Marcus stood up, pacing with that restless human energy. For decades your species has treated dreadclaws as weapons to be aimed. But what if they are actually companions waiting for the right partner? The psychological benefits alone could revolutionize Vrexian culture. Krelok's expression was unreadable, but his tail, which apparently betrayed emotional states even when his face did not, twitched with what I suspected was excitement. Our bonding rituals are built on dominance and submission. You suggest cooperation instead. I am suggesting that maybe you have been thinking about this wrong. Predators do not need to be dominated. They need to be understood, respected, and given appropriate outlets for their natural behaviors within a social framework that benefits everyone involved. Pretty words from someone who has spent one evening with a dreadclaw, Vorkath snapped. I have trained these beasts for 40 cycles. They are killers, nothing more. Marcus turned to face him directly, and I saw something shift in his expression. The playful demeanor vanished, replaced by something harder. With respect, General, I think that says more about your training methods than about dreadclaw nature. If you approach them as killers, they will respond as killers. Approach them as intelligent beings capable of choice, and you might be surprised. You dare question my expertise? I am questioning your assumptions. Big difference. The tension in the room spiked sharply enough to register on my anxiety sensors. Ambassador Tanaka cleared her throat diplomatically. Perhaps we could test Marcus's theories under controlled conditions before we start questioning anyone's expertise. Test how? I asked, though I suspected I would regret the answer. Marcus's grin returned. I am glad you asked. So here is what I am thinking. We set up a structured program. Bring in 5 dreadclaws, different temperaments, different backgrounds. I work with each one using positive reinforcement techniques, document everything, and we measure the results against traditional bonding methods. And if you fail? Vorkath challenged, if these beasts revert to their nature and tear you apart, then you get to say I told you so and I get to be dead. But I do not think that is gonna happen. Your confidence is admirable and idiotic in equal measure. Yeah, that is pretty on brand for humans generally. Krelok had been silent during this exchange, his eyes fixed on the data display. The potential benefits are substantial. If even half of what Marcus suggests is accurate, we could fundamentally transform how Vrexians interact with our most powerful natural assets. But the risks are considerable. All progress involves risk, Marcus countered. The question is whether the potential reward justifies it. And if something goes wrong, I interjected, if a dreadclaw injures or kills someone during this experiment, then we stop immediately, analyze what went wrong, and adjust protocols. Same as any scientific study. He looked around the table. Look, I get it. This sounds crazy. Human shows up, pets your apex predator once, and suddenly thinks he is an expert. But I am not claiming to be an expert on dreadclaws. I am an expert on building trust with predatory species using methods that have worked on Earth for thousands of years. Maybe those methods translate, maybe they do not. But we will never know unless we try. Ambassador Tanaka studied him thoughtfully. You really believe this will work? I believe it is worth finding out. She turned to Krelok. What does Skral's behavior since yesterday suggest? He has been calmer, more responsive to commands, more engaged with his environment. This morning he allowed 3 handlers to examine him without sedation, something that normally requires a full restraint team. Krelok's tail twitched again. I cannot explain it, but the change is undeniable. Vorkath made a disgusted sound. One positive interaction proves nothing. Dreadclaws are unpredictable. This human got lucky. Then let me get lucky 4 more times, Marcus suggested. If it is just luck, it will not hold. If it is actually a replicable technique, then we have discovered something important. The room fell silent as everyone processed this. I could see the calculations happening behind Krullick's eyes. The political implications of success versus the catastrophic consequences of failure. Finally he spoke. We will agree to a limited trial. 5 Dreadclaws, full medical and behavioral monitoring, conducted at our training facility on Vrexia Prime. But there will be conditions. Name them. First, you work exclusively with specimens considered untrainable by our standards. If your methods work on them, they will work on any Dreadclaw. Second, full safety protocols remain in place. At the first sign of genuine aggression, we intervene. Third, all data becomes joint Vrexian human intellectual property, shared equally. Marcus extended his hand in that peculiar human gesture. Deal. Krulok stared at the hand for a moment, then carefully grasped it with his much larger appendage. They shook once, sealing an agreement that I suspected would either change interspecies relations forever, or end very, very badly. Probably both. 3 weeks later I found myself on Vrexia Prime, standing in what could only be described as a Dreadclaw rehabilitation center that looked more like a maximum security prison. 5 reinforced enclosures housed 5 of the most aggressive, traumatized and allegedly hopeless Dreadclaws the Vrexian military could provide. Marcus walked down the line, examining each one with that unsettling focus humans got when they were genuinely interested in something. Okay, let us see what we have got, he muttered, consulting his datapad. Enclosure 1, Vex, female, 8 years old, rejected 3 bonding attempts, killed 2 handlers during training exercises. Enclosure 2, Grath, male, 12 years old, severe aggression issues stemming from abuse by previous owner. 3, Scylla, female, 6 years old, refuses all social contact, attacks anything that approaches. 4, Cranian, male, 9 years old, diagnosed as psychologically damaged beyond rehabilitation. And 5, Thresh, male, 14 years old, scheduled for termination due to unmanageable violent behavior. You realize they gave you 5 death sentences on legs, I pointed out. Yep. Which means if we succeed, there is no arguing with the results. He cracked his knuckles. Let us start with Vex. Ladies first. Over the next 6 hours, I watched Marcus do something I still cannot fully explain. He did not dominate. He did not command. He simply sat outside Vex's enclosure, talking quietly, occasionally tossing treats, never forcing interaction, just being present. For the first 4 hours Vex ignored him completely, pacing her enclosure with aggressive energy. Then slowly her pacing path began bringing her closer to where Marcus sat. By hour 5 she was lying down within visual range, watching him with those unsettling predator eyes. By hour 6 she was eating treats from a small opening in the enclosure while Marcus hummed something he called classic rock under his breath. This is impossible, Vorkath muttered from the observation deck above. She has attacked everyone who approached in the past 2 years. She attacked everyone who approached her as a threat, Marcus corrected, not looking up from his work. I am not approaching as a threat. I am just a weird ape who brought snacks and has nothing better to do. Your methodology lacks any scientific rigor. My methodology is patience, respect, and really good treats. You would be amazed how far that gets you. By the end of week 2, all 5 Dreadclaws were responding to Marcus. Not perfectly, not without setbacks, but responding. Vex allowed him into her enclosure for brief supervised sessions. Grath stopped displaying aggression when Marcus was present. Even Thresh, the one scheduled for termination, showed signs of recognizing Marcus as something other than a target. The data was overwhelming. Stress hormones down across all subjects. Social engagement up, aggressive incidents reduced by 73%. The Vrexian observers went from skeptical to confused to reluctantly impressed. On day 18, something remarkable happened. Marcus was working with Thresh, the oldest and most damaged of the 5, when the Dreadclaw suddenly collapsed. Medical scans showed a severe infection that had gone undetected, a consequence of old injuries never properly treated. The protocol called for immediate sedation and emergency surgery. But Thresh was so traumatized by medical procedures that sedation would likely kill him from stress-induced cardiac failure. They were preparing to euthanize him humanely when Marcus intervened. "Let me try something." "Human, he is dying," Krelok said quietly. "Which means we have got nothing to lose." Marcus entered the enclosure, unarmed, unprotected, and approached the collapsed Dreadclaw. "Hey buddy, I know you are hurting, I know you are scared, but we are gonna help you, okay? I am right here, I am not going anywhere." He sat down next to Thresh's massive head and began doing what he had done every day for 18 days. He talked softly, scratched behind armored plates, maintained calm physical contact, and somehow, impossibly, Thresh calmed enough for the medical team to approach. The surgery took 6 hours. Marcus stayed the entire time, one hand on Thresh's head, maintaining that connection. When Thresh woke up, the first thing he saw was Marcus. The first thing he felt was that familiar scratch behind his armor plates, and instead of the expected violent panic, he simply closed his eyes and went back to sleep. Vulkath watched from the observation deck, and for the first time since I had met him, he looked uncertain. "I have trained Dreadclaws for 4 decades. I have never seen anything like this." "That is because you were training weapons," Ambassador Tanaka said quietly. "Marcus is making friends." The program ran for 12 weeks total. By the end, all 5 Dreadclaws had been successfully rehabilitated. Vex bonded with a young Vrexian diplomat who used Marcus's techniques. Grath became a therapy animal for traumatized soldiers. Scylla joined a conservation program. Corrin found a home with a family who had lost their previous companion, and Thresh, against all odds, recovered fully and became the centerpiece of a new training facility built on Marcus's principles. The implications rippled across Vrexian society and beyond. Other species began examining their own relationships with predatory companions. Training facilities across the galaxy requested human consultants. Marcus became possibly the most unlikely diplomatic success story in recent history. In May, I updated my xenobiology texts with a new chapter, titled "Why Everything We Thought We Knew About Predator Bonding Was Probably Wrong, A Human Perspective." 6 months after the program ended, I visited Marcus at the new multi-species facility he was helping design. I found him in the training yard, surrounded by creatures that should have terrified him, all of them looking at him like he was the most important being in the galaxy. "Tillix," he waved me over, "check it out. We just got our first Caltharian spine ripper. Gorgeous specimen. Wanna help me teach her that humans are friends, not food?" I looked at the 3-meter-long mass of claws, teeth and aggressive armor plating, then at Marcus's hopeful expression. "You know what? Sure, why not? I have apparently learned nothing from this entire experience." Marcus laughed, that peculiar human sound of pure joy. "That is the spirit. Oh, and fair warning, she spits acid when startled." "Of course she does. But she is also really into having her spines brushed. So that is a good starting point." As I watched him approach the spine ripper with nothing but confidence, treats, and that ridiculous "who is a good apex predator" voice, I realized something profound. Humans did not survive their death world by being the strongest or the fastest or the most well-armed. They survived by looking at everything that wanted to kill them and asking, "But have you tried being friends instead?" And somehow, terrifyingly, it kept working. The spine ripper, predictably, tried to eat Marcus within the first 30 seconds. Also predictably, by the end of the hour, she was rolling on her back getting belly scratches, while Marcus explained proper spine maintenance techniques to a group of fascinated xenobiologists. I updated my report with a new conclusion. Humans are either the bravest species in the galaxy, or the most delusional, possibly both. Recommend continued observation from a safe distance. Also recommend keeping them away from anything with teeth until we better understand how they keep not dying. But as I watched Marcus work, surrounded by creatures that represented millions of years of evolutionary killing efficiency, all of them treating him like a beloved pack member, I had to admit something else. Maybe the galaxy needed a little more of that specific human insanity. Maybe we had all been thinking about predators, about danger, about the nature of cooperation, completely wrong. Maybe it took a species crazy enough to pet anything with a face to show us that the line between monster and friend was a lot thinner than we thought. Or maybe Marcus was just impossibly lucky and would eventually get eaten by something with more teeth than sense. Either way, it was going to be fascinating to watch.